Welcome to Friday night's video in our Master Series. This is the 109th video in our Master Series and the 6th video in our group mixing phase. In the last video we stopped and we're continuing on here and getting set up. Now basically at this point that for the most part that everything should be laid out. You should be set up pretty well and good to go. There's one other thing that I kind of want to address. That this is your spatialization preset. So there's a couple different ways to look at this. Sometimes some people think it's better to just go ahead and mix and then add the spatialization preset in there afterwards. And then they can bring how much they want on the out front vocals or on the backing tracks, the harmonies, and so on and so forth. And some people don't. They're like, no, I want to put that on there. I'm going to listen to that bus off the main vocals, and then I'm going to add my spatialization, effects in there, my reverb, my echo effect and whatnot, and then how much I want, and then I'm going to start mixing. So there's a couple of different ways to look at it. And in different productions, you might do it different. So, the biggest thing that I say that is if you do it now, go light. If you go up and you say, all right, I've got my setting up like this for my out front vocals, and I think it sounds great like that, back off it a little bit, and, go light on it. You can always, because it multiplies. As all of that mixes together, it multiplies the reverberation and echo effects, the spatialization effects, so it can muddy the mix. It might sound great on itself with all that in it, but when you get it in the mix, it might be a little bit much. So just back off and go light. I normally will do it right now. So I'll go into like my out front vocals, and I like convolution reverb. So I've chosen a impulse response for it, and it's on all of them across here so that the space is set, so that they all sound like they're recorded in the same space. And, I've chosen how much. Let's say I've decided, you got to know whichever convolution reverb or reverb you're using to know whatever parameters you might have and get familiar with them so that there's other things happening maybe on yours that I don't know about that need to be taken into consideration that are going to affect the sound of it. And just remember, you did it to this one, to do it, copy it, and do that probably to all of them across there, and then you're just going to bring more or less of it into all of them, so that you don't have conflicting things happening with reverberation and spatialization, because that can cause mud in a hurry. So, and let's say I come in here and I say I like it up about 0.4, or something like that. I'll back off. I'll say, okay, well, I like it about 4, so I'm going to make it about 3 or maybe 2. I don't know, and I'm going to go light on it. Then I'm going to go to my echo effect. I'm using my analog delay on that. I've set on beats at quarter, you could go 1/8 or something like that. And I've synced it because it reduces the mud effect. That echo effect, if it's in time, that it will reduce mud sound. If they're conflicting and they're not synced, they get conflicting and it can cause a muddy sound. So you got to be real careful of that. And sometimes you can get away with it, sometimes you can't. But when I'm running it across the whole mix, I try to sync it that way that they're in time. That way it doesn't cause conflicts with each other and start causing a muddying effect. So I'm not using anything else on here except for how much of the mix I'm bringing of it. Then it's set up to how much here, a quarter, and it's synced, and I'm bringing this feedback up in it to cause that echo effect. So figuring out how much you want of that in there, and then bringing this up until, because it adds presence to it. You wouldn't think so. You already got the reverb on there. Why would I want to add that to it? Because it adds depth. It adds some depth to it, because not only is it that initial reverberation and that spatialization, but then you're getting you're getting an echo effect off of it. So that whole sound from the reverb's going into that and then getting echoed. Does that make sense? So it's not like it's just echoing the sound itself, it's echoing the reverberated sound. Does that make sense? Which causes a huge depth effect. So you might go in there and you might say you're going to go like 3% or something. Just back off a little bit. Go to 2 or something like that, and go light. You can always add money where that way, at least at this point when you start mixing, that you don't have it maybe set as much as you think you would want, but you're not mixing dry. So it sounds good. It's just like when you record someone singing, sometimes you'll put some reverb on the track or something so it doesn't sound dry. It's the same way when you're mixing. So you you might want to. I always figure out about what I want it and then back off a little bit more than times than not because I love reverb. I do, and it's like everything sounds like the Taj Mahal, bro. So it's like just back off a little bit. You can always once you get the mix done, you can go back in there and go, oh yeah, my out front vocals could use a little bit more. My guitar could use a little bit more, and I've got my keyboards. They use a little bit less. Their sound it's muddying them up a little bit when I'm a little bit clearer, and so on and so forth. So that's normally what I'll do, and then I'm done. I'll let them sit there. Now, we're going to talk about the track delay thing right now, because you can either do this on the individual tracks, like I could go here, and I could go to the harmonies, and after I've rendered all the other work I've done on them, I could go highlight all of them and put like 4 milliseconds of delay on all of them to give them a delay effect. Now, I explained to you why that is, but you can either do it on the tracks, the whole group in those tracks, or the tracks itself, the individual tracks that way, but I'll normally use a track delay. So after I've got this set up here with the reverberations and on delay, and always remember that the farther the tracks are back in the mix between front to back, or from front to back, that you can add more. You can add more reverberation and more echo effect and things like that. Things that are more out front, you want to add less to keep them clear. Whereas things that are in the back that are starting to blend, you can add more to add more presence to the mix. Just be careful and go light, because when I first started mixing, I loved my stuff come out sounding muddy all the time because I loved reverb. I just couldn't get it through my head to back off. It's just too much, just because it just multiplies all that reverb until I had a muddy mess. But the track delay, the concept here is that if you snap your finger on the right hand side of your head, bap, that you can hear, and if you have your eyes closed, that where it's coming from, right? So there's 0.65 milliseconds that it takes sound to get from one ear to the other ear, and it helps your brain localize where things are at. Okay, so you putting a track delay on there, what it does is it gives the effect of that these harmony guys are going to be a little farther back, so that you hear the out front vocalist and you're not, and then the harmony guys, you're putting delay on that track, so that basically your ears are going to get perceived depth that they're like 2 or 3 feet behind the out front singer. Okay, this is a really huge spatialization effect, because this adds huge amounts of depth. You got your reverb set on there real nice with a really good impulse response, and you've set it up really nice. Then you've added a little bit of echo that's echoing off that reverberated sound to amplify, to help give depth with that echo effect. And then this adds even more depth, that it's like the band is sitting there, and the front vocalist there, the harmony guys behind them, the bass and the guitar player behind them, and so on and so forth, that with track delay. So the concept here is that you basically just need to multiply it. So you figure that, it's 0.65 milliseconds to get from one ear to the other. So multiples of that. How many milliseconds would it be to a guy standing behind them 3 foot? That, or 4 foot, or 6 foot, 8 foot, 10 foot, 12 foot, whatever. Figure it out. Just get out a calculator and multiply it. It's a pretty simple concept to do, depending on how your layout is and where you have things sit, and you put things in their place. But you have to remember that it's not that much delay, because if I put a bass drum at the very back of the stage and the very front of the stage and hit them at the same time, I don't hear ba-thump, I hear thump. It sounds like a thicker, fuller sound. Does that make sense? And because my brain is hearing that there's depth there. Does that make sense? And if I hit them separately, to where it's like I hit the bass drum at the front, bam, and I hit the one at the back, bam, that my brain perceives depth. Does that make sense? So whatever's going on in your production, this is going to add huge amounts of depth. It's going to add more presence and, ambience to your mix. It's a really viable mixing concept, and very applicable in a whole lot of mixes you may be doing. Granted, in some situations it's not. I've done some dance songs and things like that where I'd be like, bro, that is a waste of time on this dance song. I'm telling you that these people, and that the sound of what I'm doing, that is just going to get lost in what I'm doing. There's no way that it's applicable in that situation. And movie score kind of things and stuff like that, there are things that it may not be applicable, and it's just a waste. But a lot of times in a band situation where you have a song coming from a band, like maybe on a stage, that it's very applicable and it can add even more to your spatialization preset. So now your spatialization preset has a cool reverberation and it's across all the mix, so it sounds like the mix was all recorded in the same place and you've mixed it in, it sounds really good. You've put some echo effect on there to where that reverberated sound is going through an echo and then echoing it off. That's going to add depth to what's going on. Just remember, go light. A lot of it is not good. It will start causing mud, but a little bit of it adds depth. And then you got this track delay that it's even going to add more depth to what's going on, so that your body had your mix, it has this great presence and depth. Before you even started mixing, that it's just, be careful about it, and don't put too much reverb and echo effect on there. The track delay you shouldn't have to worry about too much. Just be careful of phase issues. Really listen carefully to phase issues. Sometimes 3.4 milliseconds is fine. Is getting a phase issue, and 3.5, 3.6 is fine. I don't know why, but it just does work that some way. And just be real careful of phase issues as you're going along there, and go through that and do that to all your tracks before you start mixing. In some cases you might not use that track delay. It takes experimentation with any of these setups that we're talking about doing now. Just throwing it on there and off you go. You need to experiment with it. You need to really understand the concept and what we're doing right now before we get into mixing, so that you understand what's happening, so that you can experiment with it. And that way, when you get to mixing, you have made notes about what you've done, you understand what you've done, what it's doing to your mix. So when you start mixing things together and you run into issues, that you can go back through. It's like going through a signal flow problem in the studio, that you've got a signal flow problem. Where's the problem coming from? I've got the microphone, it's going to there, 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 it's going to there. Where's the problem? A signal flow, following the signal flow back to find where the problem is. Make really good notes and understand what you're doing well and the concepts that you're applying to your mix, so that if they cause issues in your mix or in certain circumstances, that you can go back and fix the problem. So we're basically ready. At this point, our DAW set up well. We've got our mixing console set up well. We've got all our tracks laid out with what we need on them. We've got our levels set pretty well about what we need to start with. We've got all our buses set up. We've got our spatialization presets set up and our track delays set up. We've got it sent to where we need. We've got sends going off to our metering bus so we can meter things. We've got the meters set up that we need. We've got VCA fader set up so that we've got that going good. We've got any FX buses we need set up correctly. And we've got everything going out to that level bus that's going out to the main bus, that the processing we do in the next phase will be between this leveling bus and this main bus. So that's the only other thing is about effects. You may want to put some effects on individual tracks for certain areas, like in a chorus or something, or throughout the whole thing, that in my opinion they should have been rendered on there by now, and you should have saved a copy of the track that didn't have that done to it, just in case it doesn't work out. Does that make sense? And and have any FX buses set up, that we had talked about that before. So you should be pretty much ready to go and ready to start doing some mixing. So when we get into some actual mixing, that you're going to have to bear with me, because it's a pretty simple process, but we're going to set it up as a process that we're going to do on a movement, that basically you're going to repeat that process for every movement, transition, or break throughout the entire song. So basically we're going to focus on doing a movement, and then to take a look at going to another movement and things we need to take into consideration, so that you can just follow that procedure throughout your entire mix, so that you can start at the beginning, do that section, go to the next section, go to the next section, go to the next section, and use the same procedure, so that you do as good a job on every section like you should. And just keep in mind, we will talk about having to change things up as far as where things are in the mix and where you put them in the mix, because that can change from section to section, and we will address that. So peace, hope, love. I hope you enjoyed this second video and getting set up, and I'll see you in the next video when we start mixing and getting some gain staging going. Peace, hope, love. See you in the next video.